let's talk about West Africa and Africa actually, because Africa, and particularly West Africa, has gained and is still gaining its notoriety as a continent riddled with coups and political instability, leaving many wondering what is becoming of our democratic trajectory. The latest country to fall under the onslaught of this debacle is Guinea-Bissau. And ECOWAS has condemned the incident, urging the junta to return to democratic rule. But does Guinea-Bissau has the hope that constitutional governance again or likely to follow the path of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali will look the political instability in Africa that causes actors an impact on Africa's democratic exercise itself? And today joining us in studio is Dr. Victor Docker. He is a security analyst and a lecturer at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Doc, good morning.
Good morning, Kay.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
What's really the issue? Because when Guinea happened, we thought that the junta would return to democratic rule. They have, but they are now actively being part of it. So what is it that now a lot of African countries are falling on this path?
Right. So it's the reasons are multifaceted. One, you talk about the aspect of governance, okay, where you have a democratic elected president who, for let's say 4 years or 5 years, has to perform his or her mandate. Now, apart from that one, the aspect of the unconstitutional change of government through manipulation of the Constitution, okay, to extend term limits. So I would say, one, the personalities or characters of leaders themselves are the issue. Two, the economic aspect. Three, governance issues. Four, the aspect of fighting corruption, okay, the insecurity that is being faced or the people are facing. Apart from that, we know of the 3 years, the anti-French sentiments, okay, that led to what, that all built up or added to the factors that I've listed already that led to the military coming in. So it's a whole lot of issues apart from what has been stated, that these leaders do not learn from the fact that if you say you are a democracy what warrants you to finish a term limit and then off you go. But the greed of some leaders, okay, the attitude of some leaders, having seen other leaders also succeeded in that trajectory and nothing was done to them. So they also have picked up on these norms and then stayed on, manipulated the Constitution, stayed on, elect demonstrations. We saw in Blaise Compaoré in Burkina Faso what happened, and then they led to demonstrations. Demonstrations led to violent attacks by the military and police towards the citizens, and then they led to the coup. So these are some of the reasons why some African states are where we are. But largely, you pin it to the economic inequality, the insecurity by and large, where leaders have not been able to find an antidote to the insecurity that the country faces. So all these reasons, the youths bulge, which is very critical and pertinent now. So when the youths get on the street and demanding for basic needs, socioeconomic opportunities, then you would rest assured that the government has no clue or no answers to their demands, and hence it pushes the military to come in. So when you get the opportunity to study the theories of military coups in Africa, you get to understand why military coups happen. And for these reasons that has been listed, they are attributed to these factors.
But what is the role of ECOWAS and AU themselves in all of this for not being able to hold their members, democratically elected leaders, accountable for their roles in some of these?
Right. So ECOWAS, AU as a regional body, ECOWAS as a sub-regional body, their mandate, of course, to foresee good democratic practices, ensure security, by and large, bring together its members and then foster a sense of unity. Okay, so when we look at security first of all, and then let's narrow down to ECOWAS. The mandate of this beautiful institution is to ensure that its member states encourage individual member states, their leaders, to look at the aspect of democracy, look at the aspect of insecurity, economic development. Okay, so you have very nice protocols, such as protocol on good governance and democracy. ECOWAS is supposed to be sort of like a check and balance. So all those states that are not adhering to these principles or protocols, injustice and whatnot, corruption, bad leadership, these unconstitutional change of governance and all of that, they're supposed to act as a check and balance so that leaders will not take advantage and then, change the system. But recently, this mandate has come to sort of like people have questioned the mandate. How has ECOWAS responded to countries or leaders or states that have gone, pick this tangent and then put them right back on the course that ECOWAS will feel that, yes, this is the course we want to. Now, so you pick the AES states. What happened? There's always warning signs that gives you an institution that something is in offing. Now, how do you react to it? Okay, so you have another, policy that states that you cannot interfere. Okay, non-interference. So if something is happening in a state, okay, you are limited in interfering in that particular issue. Okay, so the best you can do is issue the statement, which ECOWAS does. The worst of it is sanctions, right? Economic sanctions. And then we got to know about what the conversations about, sending the standby force in Niger and whatnot. That is to the extreme, but that we know the consequences of it. So sanctions, issuing statements, okay? And then,
but Doc, but why are the sanctions only active when people take over power and not when their members try to change the constitutions in their country to hold on to power?
Ideally, that's the way it should. Immediately, someone tempers with the constitution and wants to go on, you would come in, right? But we've as a nation, right, as a continent, been, aloof. We watch things happen, and then when it happens, before we act. The proactiveness of this institution has not been apt. That's one thing. And then with all the protocols that I've said, it's not been enforced because you have some being enforced to other states and not to other states. So there's this issue about trust. So those who feel that ECOWAS is on them, okay, do not trust the institution because ECOWAS has been lenient with some other institutions. So if you say you want to see good governance everywhere, and then you are imposing sanctions, it should apply to everybody who has gone against the rule, but not against me, and then you leave country A or B. That in itself does not order well. It's disunity in that aspect. So all these are factors that also make the individual states not to trust the institution anymore, okay, which is a sad, incident.
Let me take you to Burkina Faso and bring in Dr. Lassane Ouedraogo. He's political analyst and researcher in that particular country. Doc, what's your own reading of what has happened in Guinea? The latest country to fall to this in terms of so military men taking over power.
Well, my co-panelist has already laid it clearly that not all coups in contemporary Africa belong to the same political species, because the post-coup trajectories of the Sahel and the other countries actually clearly show how these countries, these coup perpetrators, are diverging in the ways in which they are reorganizing the countries post after the coup. But when it comes to Guinea-Bissau, I think most people were not expecting this to happen because President Mbalo had already gone a little bit rogue in terms of not respecting the constitution and chasing away the ECOWAS delegation who went to actually see what is going on. And from that point, I knew that something is brewing, something is going to happen. If it's either he wins the election or he will stage a coup. And because if he is able to not win the legislative elections and still be able to organize and appoint a government, and our regional bodies are not doing anything to prevent him from doing that, the next logical point is to actually stage a coup, and some are even calling it a placeholder coup. And in my reading,
Sorry, but are you saying that this
yeah,
coup was staged by him as a president?
I strongly believe that this is a placeholder coup, in the sense that, in his logic, if he's not going to win the election, he wouldn't let the opposition win the election either. He rather let the military, his friends from the military, rule. And if you look at the government that is being formed, the prime minister that has been appointed by the military, it's someone who is very close to President Mbalo. It wouldn't have been logical at all to have President Mbalo removed by the military and bring people who are close to him back to the seat. It doesn't make any sense. That's why I'm qualifying it as a placeholder coup.
Okay, quite interesting, because over the weekend I saw the former president for Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, also make this particular point. But if that is the case, then you might not be seeing any resolution to this anytime soon. Not so.
Yeah, I think what Guinea-Bissau is laying here is a really, really bad blueprint for democracy in our region. And that is why I really hope that the international community, notably ECOWAS and the African Union, would finally wake up from the long, long, long sleep and address some of these issues that are stagnating our governance. When there is poor governance, it leads eventually to these kinds of situations. And to be able to prevent it from happening elsewhere, we need to combat poor governance. When those who are holding our public offices, those who are leading our countries, are not acting according to our constitutions, that is the moment to intervene. You don't have to wait till the khaki guys come in before you intervene.
So once the military is doing the bidding of, quote and unquote, the former president,
Yeah.
is this really something you can describe as a coup, as what happened in Burkina Faso?
This is really not a coup in my understanding, in my reading of this situation, because comparatively in Burkina Faso, the military has come out, they have taken over, they have arrested the sitting president, and later on they have arrested the coup leader of the first coup, and they have taken over, and all the institutions of the country, and there's a name for the coup leaders, the program, and so on and so forth. What is happening in Guinea is completely the opposite. It's like it's basically the same military that was serving and working alongside President Mbalo. And during the coup, he is the one informing us that he is a victim of a coup d'etat. That has to be the most amateur coup d'etat ever recorded in the history of coup d'etats. Or else, how can you arrest a president and allow him to be calling his friends and informing them, calling the media and talking to them and telling them what is exactly happening to him?
What must happen in that country?
I believe that the coup has already happened, and if the military were really intervening for the sake of saving democracy, they should have said, okay, look, we don't believe that the elections happen right. We're just going to look into the elections result by ourselves. We are going to either reorganize the election within 6 months. But what is happening is that they're telling us, oh, we're going to organize a transition for 1 year. And 1 year leads to a 2 year, and 2 years leads to 3 years. The minute the international community accepts them to lead the country for 1 year, they will stretch that. They will not be there for 1 year. They will go beyond the 1 year. Mark my words, this time around next year, they're still going to be there unless there is another coup against them. And that is the sad part of this blueprint. that President Mbalo is displaying in that beautiful country.
Do stay with me. Let me come into studio and bring in Dr. Victor Doke again. Doc, if you look at the coups that have happened, especially in West Africa, it looks like, I mean, this is a fact, so we can bring it up. It looks like the Francophone regions are the most impacted. Why that?
Well, for what I know, is one, because of the aspect of the extent of the colonial legacy. Okay. Now, when you take the Francophone region itself, you would get to understand that with regards to what the colonial legacy did was to sort of like shun or take them out of the region itself by making them very distinct from the Anglophone. Language, currency, culture, and everything. So this is one of the aspects. So it has embedded in their everyday life. So they feel, well, since we are sort of like different in terms of all these factors that I've listed, it makes it very distinct in political processes and even their understanding of democracy. Okay, so that's why we tend to have the coups that have happened in the Francophone region, and then the aspect of the anti-French sentiments. Okay, so it's a wave spreading through the colonial countries that French has or had something to do with them. So it's really something that is worrying.
They always cite that French takes too much from them,
which is true because research has shown. We've had opportunity to talk to others in there, and it's a fact that they don't really get what they bargain for. And in these kind of issues, what you get is economic disparity. So the people don't get to feel the development. There's always economic inequality, and you're talking about the growing youth population that needs jobs and development. So all these things are matters that they need to address. So taking much of resources from the country and not giving the needed aspect will bring these kind of issues. And once a country takes advantage of it, organizes a coup, the rest will follow. So it will be like a wave sweeping through until each and every colony has its own freedom. And then now the way forward is either they join the existing AES or form their own bloc, which then will be a disaster for us. Because where do we go with the existing blocks? Okay? And what will be their protocols, what will be their mandate? We need to address these issues as a matter of urgency. Otherwise, we'll have ourselves to blame.
Once we know France has that deeper role in all of this, mustn't France then lead the agenda to try to, deal with these uprisings, especially on their colonies?
They won't succeed now. Why? Because the sentiments against them is so strong. Okay. Apart from those 3 countries that have existed and then stated categorically, we don't want anything to do with France. The rest have taken a cue from this, okay, and will follow suit, unless whatever bilateral agreement we have in the area of economics, defense, agriculture, whatever, it's a 50-50. Other than that, we have nothing to do with you. You go, and the world is changing, from bipolar to multipolar now. Every country is open for business. Okay, talk about Russia, China, and all of those things. So Africa is a go area now, and especially look at these areas rich in mineral resources. The last country or leader they want to deal with is France and Macron. They would rather explore other opportunities, which are shown. Russia holding African summit, inviting individual presidents to come, and then for bilateral consultations and whatnot. All these is based on interest, what you need versus what I need and what I can give you. So the last person they want to deal with is France, because what has France offered them over the decades? And that is the issue now.
Okay. Dr. Rodrigo, let me come to you. You live in a former French colony, and you research in there. Do the sentiment really prove that people are angry towards France? And what role does France have in making sure that there's peace in all of these Francophone or former Francophone colonies in West Africa?
You're right. I have observed very two convenient caricatures that dominate much of the commentary on what is happening in the Sahel. The first one is what I called a social media driven messianic pan-Africanist fandom that turns military leaders into quasi-revolutionary icons. That is very convenient, and I will explain why. Secondly, there is this Western mainstream narrative that reduces the military rule to an inevitable slide into chaos and despotism. These two frames are simple and do rhetorical work, mobilizing audiences, justifying policies, but both kind of like obscure the causal dynamics on the ground. The first contributes to flatten our internal political contestations into spectacles and confuses performative supports with structural legitimacy. The second treats popular agency as a delusion and ignores why citizens might willingly trade electoral aesthetics to security, material relief, or dignity. But the idea of legitimacy, the idea of state failure, the idea of the demand for alternatives is quite present there. And you are right to mention the continuities with decolonization. And my panelists talked about anti-French sentiment that is quite pervasive. The parallel is worth drawing here. Uprisings and ruptures are not always reducible to ideology. They emerge as collective attempts to reclaim agency and rewrite governance norms. That said, that analogy must also be used carefully. Historically, if you follow what is happening here, you see that anti-colonial struggles generally targeted an external enemy, an external sovereign. But within our contemporary military takeovers in the Sahel, it target domestic elites as well. It target foreign partners as well, but it's not only limited to our foreign partners. It also target domestic elites that are perceived to be extensions of that French system in ways that are structurally different from what we have seen in the past. So that's why I see that it does not really bringing anti-French sentiment here does not exempt the new regimes from the political constraints and the pathologies of state power, co-optation, repression, clientelism. So that geopolitics, the new patrons that are emerging, the reconfiguration of legitimacy that we're seeing is quite decisive because there is a kind of a structural shift not just at the state level, but even at the basic level. People have this tendency to say, enough is enough. We have seen this. What is it that you're going to come and tell us that we haven't seen before? And what result has that led us to? Are you going to reorient our external partners? Are we going to see the emergence of alternative partners, alternative narratives? Maybe those alternatives will offer different terms of engagement. What people are asking is definitely a different term of engagement with the external world. And this external rebalancing matters because it gives regimes in the Sahel more room to maneuver. It reduces the effectiveness of the Western sanctions or conditionalities for that matters. It introduces new sources of material or diplomatic cover. Public opinion can be reinterpreted to reorient and enhance sovereignty or pragmatic hedging, which in turn feeds local narratives and of autonomy. So there's something that is deeply concerning to external observers, but sitting here and watching all of this unfold, I become sort of lab to study. I am studying it as a lab, but at the same time, it's so difficult to discern when you want to look at it from a certain standpoint. When you look at it from the Western gaze, well, we want to enforce democracy. They want to help us build institutions, etc., etc. But when you look at it from the military's perspective as well, you see that, oh, well, we are actually the patriots. You have been here for over 60 years and only helped us build institutions that are fragile, institutions that are not respecting any democratic norms, and yet you are praising them for winning elections, for organizing elections. We don't want that anymore.
I'll come back to you for you to then tell us what the people in those regions need. For example, in Burkina Faso, you research there, so you should know what the people want in terms of a long-lasting system, be it democracy or whatever what they want. But let me introduce into the discussion Dr. Nana Yao Miracle. He is an international relations analyst. Doc, I'm grateful to you for joining. Now, what does all of these new development portend for the unity on the African continent, ECOWAS, and AU itself?
Well, good morning to you, and good morning to my fellow panel members. Thank you for having me on your show. I think that is calls for a moment of reflection for ECOWAS and for African Union, because it doesn't really portend well for the sub-regional organization. You would recall that if you look at what happened in Guinea-Bissau several months ago, ECOWAS, for instance, was in that country to examine the possibility of the upcoming election. And that was just when the president of that country, whose term limit was up, decided with the help of the Supreme Court to extend, the limit of his presidency. And I'm informed that ECOWAS members were expelled or chased out of that country. And so it was some indicator to ECOWAS that the kind of development that is happening now was possible, and I don't know what became of that experience. And lo and behold, they waited for this to happen, and I don't think that it gives a very good impression. It inspires confidence for ECOWAS and for the African Union. It basically tells us the weakness of that organization as an entity, and going forward, maybe they have to start paying attention to the internal factors and internal dynamics within member states that trigger the point to where we get to eventually. There are a few countries that are out there that are also playing by this kind of playbook, and I'll not be surprised if we see a few other of these developments in some months to come.
Hey, okay, and that you won't be surprised. Will it be still on the former French colonies, or some of the Anglo, countries will also fall to this?
Well, look, it could be by my own examination. The idea is that the former French colonies are very susceptible to this kind of development. But if a country that sits on a fringe, take Cameroon for instance, we've seen what has happened in that country. We've seen how for so many decades you have one president sit tight for over 4 decades, and we've seen how he's tried to structure and restructure the military hierarchy of that country just so he stays in power for so long. And at some point, people become fed up with a certain situation. Their only way to push back is through some of these mechanisms. If there are no democratic avenues for them to channel, their resentment. Guinea-Bissau was a country that, for me, was sitting on a certain point. It was a disaster waiting to happen. And the indicators were there, the signs were there on the walls, and we stood aloof until matters got to the matter of deterioration before we are rushing back to talk about this issue. I think it's something that just emerged. But the context has always been there, the signs have always been there. So I think that unless we begin, both the ECOWAS and the African Union begin to appreciate the internal dynamics of the respective member states, right? The need for a democratic restructure, the need for what we call democratic dividends, and people begin to be comfortable with the system, they will always try to toy and experiment with different kind of systems that is to their benefit.
So more of time for the AU and ECOWAS to reconsider the configuration of the organization, the two organizations.
It's very, very important. It's very, very important because if you look at what is happening out there, it appears as if the organization is not inspiring confidence, anymore. And if you don't put your member states, if you don't put your house in order, it becomes very difficult for you to walk around carrying the moral stick and trying to put people in order. And this is why I think that, for instance, if ECOWAS wants to impose sanctions on Guinea-Bissau, for instance, it has to be very, very careful. If you want to do anything drastic or radical, you have to be very, very careful. I mean, there is an example of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali for us. And Guinea-Bissau is a very fragile economy, so even if you want to take radical actions against that country in terms of economic areas, one, you need to understand how that is likely to blow back the implication and how that is even likely to affect the people even more, than the political, elite. And I give you an example. The evidence out there is that if you look at the legal aspect of Guinea-Bissau's economy, the idea has been that it's been growing steadily. And I hear that a 4.8% over a 5.1, economic GDP. And so, had it not been for this, political interaction, the legal aspect of the country's economy would have been doing, very well. You don't want to interrupt what is happening now by imposing economic sanctions against the country, considering the fact that majority of the people, right, are benefiting from the country's very good exports, which I am informed is cashew, exportation. So I think that, like you said, it is hard time that ECOWAS and African Union, restructured, paid attention to the internal dynamics, the democratic practices of their member states. When the signs are there on the wall, we do not wait until matters have gotten out of hand before we begin to make noise about it, like we've seen, happening in other developments in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso.
Well, no, in international relations, when democratically elected leaders are seen in the company of these, quote, leaders who came to power through coup, what impact does that also have on other people to then have the urge to do the same? I mean, in terms of undertake coups in their own countries.
Can you repeat that?
I just want to find out the impact of democratically elected leaders, having that friendship with leaders who came to power via coup on other countries and military people having the edge to also then conduct coups. Because if democratically elected leaders are seen flirting with coup leaders, then of course, wouldn't it have any impact on other people having the same mindset of doing the same thing?
Yeah, that's an interesting question to ask. But what you must understand is that every country has, its own nuances, right?
Okay.
The susceptibility of a country the possibility of a country being susceptible to coup, have a number of indicators. One, has that country itself been a product? Has it witnessed coup d'etat, in its political development, right? What is the relationship between the military and the civil, and the elite? How well is the military entrenched within the politics of that country? And then there's always geopolitics. To what extent is that civilian leader or that civilian leader with autocratic tendencies supported by international actors? If you look at Guinea-Bissau, for instance, right, the military has played a very important role in that country's political development right from the days of independence struggle, right? if you look at the brutality of Guinea-Bissau's independence struggle from Portugal for about 12 years, the military that we have right now played a very important role, right, in that independence struggle, and that's group of antagonizing the colonial forces are those that metamorphose into integrating into the military, and they have played very important role with the political, elite. So for a very long time, the military has had a very, very important, role to play in Guinea-Bissau's political development. And then you look at the fact that Guinea-Bissau itself is a product of so many failed and successful coups. The statistics is that between 5 to 18 or 19 coups, with 4 or 5 of them being successful coups, have taken place over the number of years that the country has been in existence since it gained independence in 1964. So the idea is that a country's relationship with autocratic leaders does not necessarily mean, there is some relationship though, but it does not necessarily mean that if a democratic country begins to flex or has relationship with autocratic leaders, automatically, it goes back into the country. Like I said, it depends on the political nuances of that democratic state and its relationship with that autocratic, will be leader. But I think that we must begin, countries that are considered as democratic states must guard jealousy against their democratic efforts. And that is why the European Union, for instance, is warning Ghana, or not warning Ghana per se, but it's putting the indicators out there that, Ghana is bedeviled by violent extremism in the Sahel, right, and coup d'etats in the West African sub-region. So we need to jealously guard against some of these things and protect what make our democracy resilient, what make our democracy an envy, on the continent.
And we've become, a point of reference when it comes to democracy, really. But Dr. In all of this, what must Africa itself do, starting from, say, ECOWAS, in trying to probably stem the tide in these uprisings that we're seeing? Too many people, too many countries are falling to this pathway.
Right. So Dr. Mreku mentioned one specific important thing, restructuring. ECOWAS needs to look at its, mandate again, restructure, internal restructuring. Now, apart from that one, what do they need to do with regards to being proactive? You have very good systems in place, the early warning systems that will pick up the signs. And Dr. Mreku mentioned that when the signs are there, you act on it. You don't wait till, issues happen before. So it's always been like the fire brigade approach, wait till things happen and then now go in. They need to be very proactive, okay? We talk about the issues about lack of resources. Yes, if it is funding, how then do they look at the aspect of funding for, capacity building, okay, for training and whatnot? Now, they need to act consistently on coups, consistently. It means what applies to country A must apply to country B. Act consistently on coups and democratic violations. All those who violate their constitutional democracy, you have to deal with them, precisely. And then you have to reconnect. Reconnecting with not only the government, but the people themselves. And then uphold principles. You deliver real impact. That's what we are looking at. Real impact with regards to all these beautiful protocols that you have. Okay. The youth development aspect has to be a priority to them. Because all over Africa now, we look at how the youth, through media, through social media, are very active in propagating their stance against government. They need to now look at that. All these things put together, how then can they, look at bringing those who have departed back?
But look, if social media romanticizing can lead to this, how then about democratically elected leaders romanticizing coup leaders not have an impact on other people trying to do the same? Because if our democratically elected leaders are accepting us, then we can also do the same.
Exactly, two ways. The aspect of it is that what is the end goal? The end goal matters, okay? Now, democratically elected leaders, what they hope to gain, what is their mandate, what do they hope to achieve? Delivering on the objectives for the people. That is key. And then you look at all these cool leaders also coming at the back of us, Dr. Mreku said, well, let's do things right. the Pan-African sentiments or psychological aspect also, we are going to be seen as what the real leaders, because these democratically elected leaders have not been able to. So we are the ones now coming to, but that doesn't make it right. Let's look at the variables that warrant these coup leaders to come in. And when we are able to deal with these variants or variables, then you can be assured that these military guys will stay where they are and then support the system to grow. Other than that, we'll have this frequently.
Okay. Let me come to you, Dr. Lassani Ouedraogo here. And I wanted to find out from you earlier that in these colonies, I mean, let's say Burkina Faso, where you are, what is the sentiment of the people? What do they want done?
Right now, a lot of Burkinabés are in support of the transitional government. And actually, as a matter of fact, it's no longer called the transitional government because, you know, they have revised the constitution and the law to give President Traoré a full tenure, basically a 5-year tenure as a president. So he's not referred to officially as the president of the transition, but he is simply referred to as the president of Burkina Faso. So, and one of the things that you also need to understand that is Burkina Faso, just like in many other Sahelian countries here, power is very diffuse. You know, workers' unions, students' unions, and all of those small social organizations, civil society. I heard a discourse of erasing civil space, civics. It's not happening. As a matter of fact, power is actually being played out in the hands of so many people that are not necessarily directly linked to the military. And the capacity to link to those socio-political groups far beyond the traditional political parties is what is actually maintaining them partially. Secondly, it is what they are accomplishing on the ground. What do Burkinabe want? That if you take a common person outside, they just want to be living in a place where there's security. Of course, there's a lot of media telling us that the security situation has not improved. That is lies. There's a lot of improvement. There's so many places where you can actually go that you couldn't go 2 years ago. I drive around, I go to so many places personally by night, and a year ago or 2 years ago, I wouldn't dare, even if you paid me millions. So people want to see security. They also want to see a lot of basic things like hospitals. And beyond all of those material things, people want to have the possibility to dream. If you offer them that possibility that there's a future beyond what is happening today, they will hold on to that. And that is exactly what the military regime is capable of providing. That is something better, far better ahead. And that, as a matter of fact, that democracy is not behind us. This is actually part of the discourse, that democracy is not behind us. Under the military rule, democracy is just ahead. And there's a certain number of things that are going to be fixed for us to be able to lay the ground for a better form of democracy, participative democracy, where people, it's not just democracy for the sake of democracy, but it is a form of democracy that is actually providing you for your basic needs. Your education of your children, schools are being built, roads are being built, hospitals are being built, money is being, diverted in the ways that people are seeing that, oh, the military just came in and our gold is actually being stored here. In the past, we didn't have any, not even 5 kilograms of gold in the name of the country sitting somewhere here. But now they're telling us, oh, we got this number of tons of gold, and this is what we are doing with it. So basically, what the military intervention has done in Burkina is quite remarkable in the sense that it has been able to reawaken the sense of belonging to a nation called Burkina Faso. And that is kind of like weird coming from me, who used to be very, very, very harsh on this regime. But I have been living here for almost a year now, and I've been observing I've been, studying, I've been interacting with people and seeking to understand, why are you supporting this regime? Why are you supporting? And the question I'm getting is, why are you not supporting them, given that they are doing exactly what the career politicians have failed to do over the last 60 years? And obviously, Captain Traore and his government have another blueprint to that, the failures of Thomas Sankara's regime. They can borrow things from Sankara, and also paying attention, why did Sankara fail on this issue and not other issues? And that is something that we are not, we are not really bringing out most of the time in our analysis, that there is a way of reimagining the future by reinventing the past, by bringing back past figures and actually reimagining a future of West Africa, where borders between countries are inexistent, West Africa where citizens are actually at the center of the development projects. And when land is being seized by government and redistributed to people who didn't have access to it, and at that basic level of society, when you bring that kind of social justice to say, look, we cannot allow just a few people to be landowners, and yet 80% of the people of this country live out of farming. So those are just basic things that they are doing. I always say that it's really, really easy to satisfy the Burkinabe people, because we are not used to getting anything for ourselves. So when you come in and you are able to just provide a very basic, that a Ghanaian find this is just very basic. This is taken for granted, but here it is not. And if you are able to bring that, people will applaud, people will support you, they will sustain you, and urge you to do more. And that is exactly what is happening on this land here.
So for someone like Traore, what do you think will be his impact on other military people in other countries?
Well, Traore is very charismatic in the ways in which he is addressing international issues. He has not been trained in international politics. He doesn't know how to be diplomatic about issues. And a lot of other militaries might be attempted to say, oh, this is what, I am just like this guy. I also see things here that is not going well, that is not going my way. And I could actually take over power and fix, but it's not as easy as it seems.
Okay.
Traore came to power in the backdrop of a prolonged terrorist crisis in Burkina, which has been going on for 10 years. And over those 10 years, people have suffered a lot. And this man is coming in, he's reorganizing the army. He's deploying them. In the past, a single base, military base of would go with maybe 10 AK-47s. And now each one of them, even the citizens, volunteers, have their own weapons. And it used to be said that, oh, we cannot afford to buy these weapons. We couldn't buy them.
Okay.
And when a single terrorist will show up in a village, shoot, and everybody will disappear.
Okay.
And today the terrorists are the ones who are in hiding.
Okay.
So there's a lot of transformation at that level again that is quite different and could not be replicated easily by other militaries elsewhere.
Okay. Dr. Odogo, just in a minute, we're wrapping up. In Guinea-Bissau, what is your expectation of what should happen there? You say there's the president undertaking something you cannot even call a coup. What must happen?
Yeah, I definitely see it as a placeholder coup. And what is going to happen is going to be a protracted discussions over the year to come. And also remember that this is a very small country in numbers of people. And there is a very active opposition. Some of them have been in exile. Some of them have been quite put aside. And this is a moment for them to also try to emerge within this. So there's going to be a lot of negotiation internally to see how the transition is going to work. But already I see the military bringing in people who are quite close to the outgoing president. So that goes on to say that it's already played out, and the discussions are going to be very, very difficult. And that is where Guinea-Bissau needs the international community. It doesn't matter how we criticize them for the absence of potency, or the absence of efficiency. We're still going to need ECOWAS to be implicated. We're still going to need the African Union to be quite implicated, so that we don't lead, so that this coup does not lead to something. Because when there's instability, there's a lot of other things that can creep in, and that's what we need to avoid by all means necessary to maintain stability. Make sure we don't have Al Qaeda scrolling in. Make sure we don't have any other international power, meddling in, but only ECOWAS and perhaps the African Union taking over, coming in and saying enough is enough. We need to see things clearly here. The president is gone. What happened with the election results? And if there are two people contesting the results already. So, and I think that is where it's all going to play out. Yeah, unless our international community plays a major role in this crisis, it can lead to something substantially bad.
Okay, all right. Grateful to you. Dr. Nanaya Amreku, let me hear from you. What do you expect to happen in the issue of Guinea-Bissau?
Well, I think the playbook is out there for us to see. I think that two things, either the military entrenches itself, or it outlines a transitionary period where it says that, look, after this number of years, we will return the country to a democracy, and two things are likely to happen. Either, somebody from within the military, right, is made to run for the presidential seat, or they find a civilian that is really close to the military, right, and endorse that person to take power. And I think that whatever be the case, like my other colleague said, ECOWAS must really play a role in this kind of negotiation. Look, these things have happened. At the end of the day, how do you resolve the issue at hand? And look, if the military is making the argument that the civilian or the country's involvement with how do you call it, the drug cartel, narcotics, is one of the reasons why they captured power. I think that issue must be addressed, because the role that Guinea-Bissau, the notorious identity Guinea-Bissau has accrued to itself as a narco state, is really, really, really troubling. Not only for that country, but for the West African sub-region. So I think that once we understand that these are the kind of playbooks, these are the kind of issues they'll be bringing out, ECOWAS must then be a mediator, like a mediator must play that mediating role into addressing or agreeing with the plans that the military regime, the junta, brings to play into restoring the country into democracy. Otherwise, we do not want the community, the West African sub-region, tiptoeing and reducing in numbers and accruing more numbers to this autocratic tendency. So I think ECOWAS must play a role in this transient stage of the country and see how the country can be restored to democracy, no matter how long it takes.
Nanaya Amreku is Dr. Nanaya Amreku is international relations analyst. Doctor, okay.
Yeah.
Just a minute.
So I would say, in addition to what the co-panelists have said, we need ECOWAS to be very proactive, not only with this particular issue, but henceforth in the region. Observation, proactive, pick up the early warning signs enough. But in the context of this discussion, preventive diplomacy has to be the key. In everything that they do, the co-panelists from Burkina, Dr. Amreku mentioned that sanctions at this point in time may not be good. It will derail all the economic gains that they've done. So if sanctions are not the best way to go, what are the alternatives? So pressure, diplomatic pressure on the leaders in there, the elites and the military leaders, to now look at how, a transition period has been stated, and then how long for them to get back to democratic dispensation. And I think in all of this, sustained engagement is very key. They shouldn't start a process and then go to sleep and then watch things happen. How can they ensure that whatever that has been said by the elites and the military would be adhered to, and it's a pressure that would, bring results. Other than that, then I think ECOWAS will not do any good, and I fear what will happen next after Guinea.
But how do we prevent this from happening again?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We need to look at how the sub-regional body can be proactive enough to act on early warning signs and then initiate approaches, which are already there. Collaboration, coordination is very key. One thing we've missed out on all of this is the hegemonic role that some states play. So, for example, you talk about Nigeria in the past, that was a hegemony or hegemonic actor with regards to security, going in, engaging in negotiations, mediations, sending troops and all of that. Who or which country can act in that aspect? Well, Ghana has shown the way. Well, per our stance, we can do that if ECOWAS is willing to now, pick up some countries to lead that aspect in dealing with these issues. Then I think it will do itself a lot of good. But other than that, then it means it has to be very proactive and then act as a hegemonic, head that we know it has to do.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Victor Doke is a security analyst and a lecturer at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. On Zoom, we're joined by Dr. Nanaya Mbereku. He is an international relations analyst, and also by Dr. Lassani Wadrego. He is a political analyst and a researcher in Burkina Faso. Still to come here, we have an interaction with Ken Mani, who is a Ghanaian technology entrepreneur committed to solving Africa's biggest challenges through innovation. He's co-founded a lot of, technology startups, and you'll be intrigued. You'll be intrigued by what he's been able to do. We'll have interaction with him here on the show. Do stay on.